They say a mother's love is forever, but in this house, a mother's hunger never ends. If you hear a lullaby at 3 a.m., do not open your eyes. Because she isn't singing to a baby, she is singing to you. I moved into the old manor because the rent was dirt cheap. I didn't care about the rumors of the crying widow. I only cared about my budget. The house was massive, with dark oak wood and windows that rattled every time the wind blew. On the first night, the air turned ice cold. My bedroom door creaked open. I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it. A soft, wet dragging sound coming from the hallway. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I looked through the gap in the door. The hallway was pitch black, but I saw a thin, pale hand reaching out from the attic stairs. The fingers were impossibly long, with black veins popping out. It wasn't a hand. It looked like a claw. Suddenly, a voice whispered right into my ear. "Are you my baby?" I jumped and turned around. No one was there. But on my white pillow, there was a single, fresh, bloody handprint. I couldn't sleep after that. I sat in the corner of the room with all the lights on. Every shadow looked like a person. I heard a scratching sound coming from inside the mattress. It felt like something was trapped inside, trying to claw its way out to reach me. When I finally gathered the courage to cut the mattress open with a kitchen knife, I didn't find springs. I found hundreds of old, yellowed photographs of people who had lived in this house before. In every single photo, their eyes had been burned out with a cigarette. My heart hammered against my ribs. Why was I here? Why did the landlord smile so strangely when he gave me the keys? I looked at the handprint on my pillow again. It wasn't drying. It was growing larger, as if the blood was alive that I tried to leave the next morning, but my car keys were missing. Every drawer in the kitchen was pulled open. I felt like 100 eyes were watching me from the shadows. I checked the heavy front door, but it was jammed tight, as if someone had glued it shut from the outside. That night, I locked my door with 3 bolts. I stayed awake, holding a flashlight. At exactly 3 a.m., the music started. It was a slow, distorted lullaby coming from the basement. I followed the sound like I was in a trance. The basement door was wide open. Down there, I saw a red wooden cradle rocking back and forth by itself. There was no wind. There was no one there. But the cradle was moving fast, hitting the floor with a loud thud. Inside the cradle, there wasn't a baby. It was filled with human hair and old, broken teeth. A shadow moved in the corner. It was a woman in a tattered wedding dress. Her face was just a dark hole. She looked at me and screamed a sound that didn't belong to a human. I tried to run back up the stairs, but the wooden steps turned into soft, rotting flesh under my feet. I fell, my hands sinking into the disgusting, warm wood. The woman started to crawl toward me, her joints popping like dry sticks breaking. She wasn't walking. She was glitching through the air. Every time she got closer, the smell of burnt meat filled my lungs. I reached for a heavy metal pipe on the floor and swung it, but it went right through her like she was made of smoke. She leaned over me, her mouth opening wider than her entire head, and whispered, "The cradle needs a new heart." I ran back upstairs, but the stairs felt like they were getting longer. The walls started to bleed a thick, black oil. I locked myself in the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My reflection wasn't moving when I moved. My reflection was smiling, but my own face was terrified. The reflection leaned forward and whispered, "She wants your skin." I backed away, hitting the bathtub. The water started running on its own, but it wasn't water. It was thick, dark hair pouring out of the faucet. I broke the mirror in a panic and found an old diary hidden behind the wall in a secret compartment. It belonged to the previous owner, a man named Elias. The pages were stained with tears and grease. The last page was written in shaky, red ink. "She doesn't want a child. She wants a body to live in. If she feeds you the black salt, your soul is gone." I can feel her fingers under my skin now. She is pulling my spirit out like a thread. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my throat. I coughed violently, and a small, black stone fell into my hand. It was the black salt. I realized with horror that I had already eaten it in my sleep. My skin began to itch. I looked at my arms and saw tiny bumps moving underneath, as if worms were crawling toward my chest. The house began to groan, the floorboards screaming in agony. I heard the widow's voice coming from the vents, singing that horrible lullaby again. "Sleep now, little vessel. The salt has opened the door." I realized the salt was a bridge, and she was already crossing over into my mind. The walls of the house began to shrink. Every photo on the wall changed. Now, every person in the pictures had their eyes scratched out. I heard a scratching sound coming from inside the walls. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Something was crawling between the bricks, trying to get to me. I ran to the front door, but there was no handle. The door was just a solid wall of wood. The windows were now covered in thick, black iron bars that hadn't been there before. I turned around, and she was standing at the end of the hall. The widow. She was 7 feet tall, her limbs bending in ways that bones shouldn't bend. She started to crawl on the ceiling, moving like a giant spider. Her hair fell down like black rain, soaking my clothes in a foul-smelling liquid. "You are such a beautiful vessel," she hissed. I tried to scream, but my voice was gone. My skin started to feel tight, like it was being pulled by invisible needles. I ran into the kitchen and grabbed a butcher knife, but as I looked at my hand, the knife turned into a snake and slid away. The house was playing with my mind. The floor turned into a deep pool of black liquid, and I started to sink. I fought to stay above the surface, but cold, dead hands reached up from the liquid and grabbed my ankles, pulling me down into the darkness. I could see thousands of faces under the surface, all the previous victims of the house, their mouths sewn shut with silver wire. They were trying to tell me something, but all I could hear was the widow's laughter echoing in the void. Wait, if you think I survived, you are wrong. What happened next is something no human should ever see. If you want to see if I made it out alive, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because the next part will make your heart stop. I woke up tied to a chair in the basement. The Red Cradle was right in front of me, rocking slowly. The widow was standing over a large pot of boiling black liquid. She held a rusty knife that glowed with a sick, green light. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at my reflection in the liquid. She started to chant in a language that sounded like stones grinding together. It made my ears bleed. I looked down at my hands. They were turning pale and gray, just like hers. My fingernails were falling off, and sharp, black claws were growing in their place. I realized the ritual wasn't to kill me. It was to merge us. She was going to step into my skin and leave her rotting spirit behind. She leaned in close, her breath smelling like rotting meat and old earth. She touched my cheek, and where she touched, my skin turned into ash and fell away, revealing raw muscle. "Almost time," she whispered, her voice vibrating inside my skull. "Once the fire reaches the cradle, we will be one." I noticed a small gap in the ropes. I had been sweating so much that the knots were slipping. I waited until she turned back to the pot, and then I lunged forward with all my strength. I managed to kick the cradle over. It shattered against the stone floor. Inside, hidden under the layers of hair, I saw a human skull with a name engraved on it in gold. It was her name, Isabella. This was her anchor to this world. If I could destroy the skull, I could destroy her. I grabbed the skull, the bone feeling freezing cold against my palms. She let out a roar that shook the entire house, causing the ceiling to crack. She flew at me, her mouth opening wide to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. I scrambled toward the furnace in the corner of the basement. The flames inside were roaring. She grabbed my leg, her claws digging deep into my calf, pulling me back toward the darkness. I screamed in pain, but I didn't let go of the skull. With one final effort, I threw the skull into the roaring fire. The widow froze midair. She let out a sound of pure agony as the skull began to glow orange and crack in the heat. She started to smoke and burn. Her body shriveled up like a dead leaf in a fire. She screamed one last time before exploding into a cloud of thick, black ash that filled the room. The pressure in the house vanished instantly. The front door reappeared, and the bars on the windows dissolved. I ran out into the cold night air, not looking back once. I didn't stop until I saw a police car on the main road. I told them everything, but when they went inside, the house was perfectly normal. No cradle, no blood, no widow. The landlord even showed them the basement. It was empty and clean. I thought I was safe. I moved to a different city and started a new life. But a week later, I was brushing my hair in my new apartment. I looked in the mirror and saw a small, black mole under my lip that definitely wasn't there before. My eyes looked slightly different, darker, older. Then I heard it, a soft, distorted lullaby coming from under my bed. I looked down, and my own hand started to move on its own, reaching for my throat. The widow didn't die. She had successfully moved into the only place I couldn't escape. She was inside me. The widow is gone, but her song is still in my head. If you enjoyed this nightmare, smash the like button and comment "cursed" below to let me know you stayed until the end. Check out the playlist on the screen for more terrifying stories. And remember, never answer the door at 3 a.m. Good night.